Exactly like me. My flight from Seattle, Washington arrived at the Jacksonville, Florida airport at about 3 p.m. I remained in my seat because I was in no hurry to get off the airplane. Why should I be? I had nowhere to go. I had no family, I had no home, and I had no friends. I had nothing except the clothes on my back. I had just turned 19 and I'd just been discharged from my tour of duty as a medic at Bassett Army Hospital, a large medical facility in Fairbanks, Alaska. I took a checkered taxi from the airport to downtown Jacksonville. I told the driver to drop me off in front of the Florida Theater on Market Street. Jacksonville is a very large city, and though I knew my way around, I could not get my bearings unless I started from Market Street near the Florida Theater. That was the area that I always went to when I ran away from the orphanage that I had lived in as a young boy. I stood watching as people passed me on the street. I stood watching as people by the hundreds shuffled past me on their way to do whatever it is they had to do in the free world. I had never had anything important to do when I walked the streets as a boy, except maybe scrounge for food and maybe hunting the many garbage dumpsters in the alleyways of a big city. I began to walk toward the Trailways bus station over on Bay Street. As I walked along, I wondered if I might see any of the homeless bums who had fed me when I was a cold, lonely, hungry little boy on the streets. Old men who had no jobs, and the smell of liquor was always on them. Old wrinkled women who pushed shopping carts around with whatever valuables they might have had. Some of them stood by themselves, constantly jabbering and talking to invisible people. As I neared the bus station, they began to fill the street. They were dirty and most were unshaven. Most of them were walking while others were sitting along the sidewalks with their backs against the brick walls of the buildings. Some were laid out on the sidewalks with their arms folded across their chests as if they were resting in peace. As I looked at each and every one of them, I just walked along. I looked into their eyes and their faces, and I wondered why none of them cared, if they were even important in the world. Why don't they care how they look? I watched them drink from their bottles covered in brown paper bags. They would take a drink and then laugh out loud. They did not seem to have a care in the world. But they all seemed to be happy and acted as though life was just a carefree thing. I felt a little sad when I walked among them. Here I was, a young man without a past to guide me. All I had were my memories from the orphanage, and they had taught me absolutely nothing. No one had prepared me for what was happening to me now. What was I supposed to do? Where was I supposed to go? How does one get a check or open a bank account? How do people buy cars? How do you get some of those papers to fill out to get a job? How do you cook, and where do you get those pots and pans that you cook in? I didn't have the slightest idea how to take care of myself. I was in the middle of a very big city, and I might as well have been totally blind. The Children's Home Society Orphanage in Jacksonville, Florida had accomplished absolutely nothing in all those years, except to feed, clothe, and house me. I stopped for a minute in front of one of the many stores along the street. I looked up at my reflection in the large plate glass window, and I turned around and I looked up and down the street. My heart sank in my chest when I came to the realization that there were hundreds of thousands of unwanted, unloved adult and child orphans, and they were all living outside the gates of any orphanage. It was sad to know that in the free world I was now standing among people who had parents, but they were exactly like me.